Nib95 made a video. Yes, it's on his Twitter page, and his premise is that exclusives benefit the consumer. But in evaluating the video, there's something that is missing so far. What's missing is he does not differentiate between first-party exclusivity and third-party exclusivity. He points out that exclusivity can benefit the customer if the customer prefers or values quality over accessibility, not realizing or maybe not acknowledging that both quality and accessibility can go hand in hand. He basically tags or puts a legend up here that says, don't let Xbox/PC aligned influencers who previously championed exclusives gaslight you into believing gamers ought to be pro multi-platform or exclusives are anti-consumer. And then he says, simply because Xbox pivoted. Well, I'm not a former Xbox influencer who championed exclusivity. I never have been. I'm more a former PlayStation player, current, whatever you want to call me, and more PC centric. And I've always never championed exclusivity. However, I see a statement like this, exclusive benefits the consumer, and I would love to hear your position, yet you do not make a distinction between a first-party exclusive status of a game versus a third-party dealt status of a game. And it's important because, for instance, Spider-Man 2018 or Spider-Man 2 or Miles Morales, these are games that are fully funded by Sony's PlayStation in order for development team Insomniac to build the game. License they acquired from Marvel for the video game, made sure everything was done, and locked the game down to their consoles for a number of years. In that right, they've said this game is in our ecosystem and we've kept it here to serve our own player base, to attract you to also buy our console, to make you probably, go ahead and look at what we're doing here. And if you like it, buy and come on in here. The second side of this is, for instance, the same PlayStation approaching Pearl Abyss, Crimson Desert's developers, and have them sign an exclusivity deal that will block a release of Xbox for a year. So that exclusivity, agreement wants an unfair advantage over Xbox. But in Nib's video here, he says it in some way promotes competition. Listen for yourself.
I wanted to touch on the benefits to the consumer of console exclusives, right? Because besides console exclusives, incentivizing the console ecosystem and increasing competition.
And he calls it console exclusive because you have to call it console exclusive because there really aren't any exclusives these days if you actually think about PC being involved now in taking everybody's games. PC is the game reaper. Get it? All right. Anyways, you see what I mean here?
Between platforms, etc. It's actually a boon to gamers, which is often missed, right?
Okay, it's a boon to gamer, which is often missed. How is it a boon to gamer?
Often say, oh no, multi-platform benefits consumers. Well, not necessarily, actually. Exclusivity benefits consumers too. At least if you're a consumer who values quality over accessibility.
Okay, now that almost makes no sense to me. And perhaps I'm the one missing something. It's probably my fault. However, I'm going to respond to this by saying both things, quality and accessibility, can actually go hand in hand and can be true. Obviously proven by majority of some of the most quality games ever existing. In fact, look at some of the big sellers and the big names and the much more known games like The Witcher 3, like Grand Theft Auto. I mean, quality is subjective. However, I'm just saying that people who thought those games were quality games were able to gain access to those games on their platforms of choice. Elden Ring, Hogwarts Legacy, right? Cyberpunk 2077, Baldur's Gate 3, the big sellers have had accessibility. Even Xbox games, call it what you want. Talk about the quality how you want. Maybe the quality is not up to your standards, but Minecraft has got accessibility. Call of Duty's got accessibility, right? And so both things can actually exist together. For instance, let's say accessibility, you walk into the store, you want to buy salt. When you get to the aisle where salt is, the quality is also something that's dependent on your own price as an individual, what you want to spend. So you can choose from a variety of salt. You could buy iodized salt, you could buy kosher, you could buy sea salt, pink salt, real salt, whatever the heck it is you want to buy, and whatever your money can afford to buy. But it's nice for you to gain access to the product that you want. You, as the consumer, being served at your own or on your own terms is what pro-consumerism is about. So valuing quality over accessibility is weird, because if you remove accessibility, you have now stunted the consumer's access, and thereby you probably have something that is less consumer friendly in the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, anti-consumer. You see how that works? That's what the pro-consumer, framework is actually about. It is what it is. So I see this, you value quality over accessibility argument as one that I don't think it can actually stand on its own two legs. Because I just took away the accessibility one from you. In fact, let me look at it from another way. If something is quality and I can't access it, how can I even judge its quality? Another question that should be at least considered.
As console exclusives provide development and game design benefits, which
Such as?
developers have been telling us about for generations and years.
Like which ones? You tell us. Because every game is different. Every developer has their constraints. Every developers have their challenges. In fact, he puts up this thing here with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and how the developers were saying how, focusing on the PlayStation 5, development was actually very fun, and they loved it and they enjoyed it and so on and so forth. However, this game will never hold a candle to a game like Hogwarts Legacy in sales. Whereas the developers over there in Avalanche Software, they themselves, yes, they had to basically step by step launch their game on different platforms, but they were at least able to get you a PC, PS5, and Series X version of the game, and Series S, at launch. So what were their challenges? Well, apparently they have, in my opinion anyways, a lot more comfort level in doing multi-plat launch than apparently this Square Enix studio or this Square Enix director who's over here saying that, doing one platform was beneficial and such, right? Or maybe they were just saying it because it probably made sense for them on their team. Again, when you say design benefits and such as what? Because every game is different and every developer has different constraints. Every year, Call of Duty launches because it has basically an almost unlimited budget, but it launches on the PS4, the Xbox One, now the Series, and the Series X. Even during COVID, they sent recording and capture gear to all of their voice actors, and they captured and did all their mocap stuff in their homes. They sent the data back into them. So they have very minimal development constraints compared to everybody else. They could do it. You know what I mean? So again, and you got to go back and look at that story, guys. Not every studio could actually go ahead and, pull that off. Mortal Kombat 11, I remember. If you want, guys, I don't know if they've probably maybe patched it now. Go listen very carefully to Mortal Kombat 11's DLC. The gentleman that recorded the voice for Shang Tsung, he's the one that actually did the original voice of Shang Tsung in the good old Mortal Kombat movies. So they basically carry Hiroyuki Tagawa, yes. I remember in the DLC, it sounded like his voice was recorded in a home studio for the Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate DLC. Because then it was hard for them to be able to, get voice actors. And then in some interviews, they were talking about how they had to coordinate, across different time zones to get the different voice actors to get things done. So NetherRealms, they don't have a problem with multi-plat and simultaneous development. And I just named two studios for you. One massive budget studio, the other one what I would call, not so massive budget, studio. And their game development paradigm is probably similar in terms of budget to what Square Enix has.
A few interview snippets of which I've included within this video.
Yeah, I got interviews and I got all kinds of, anecdotes as well to go ahead and basically counter each one. I think I have multiple for days. Gotham Knights, should we do that one too? Anyways, whatever.
Because what it means is these tentpole games can continue to...
What tentpole games? What tentpole games? Whose tentpole games? You're showing me something about Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is not a tentpole game that belongs to PlayStation. Final Fantasy is not a tentpole game that belongs to PlayStation. Argue within the parameters and make statements that are sensible within the limits of your argument. Tentpole games. Whose? It's not what? In fact, these development constraints and PlayStation themselves, who engages in timed exclusivity, understands that their studios may not necessarily need the burden of, you know, multi-platform development even after the game has released and launched. And what did they do to mitigate that? They went ahead and acquired studios like Jetpack Interactive and Nixxes to get the job done, of which even still, when you now look at the much newer games, and I'm going to show you this because this is very important, you realize that their studios are now working hand in hand with their porting studios to get these ports out. So basically, it seems like they're orienting their studios to pretty much be able to go ahead and, you know, get the capability to do multi-plat development. Insomniac Games here worked on the Spider-Man remastered PC port, as well as Nixxes software. If we go into the Spider-Man 2, let's do Horizon Zero Dawn. Guerrilla did this one. And Nixxes. You see that? So even PlayStation themselves are mitigating for that in terms of reducing the burden and overcoming whatever challenges there may be for multi-platform development. So maybe this team that developed the Final Fantasy game, perhaps they just didn't have the resources, but that's their own anecdote.
Be made from the ground up around one sole platform, right?
That's nonsense. It's very, very simply debunked by the fact that if you want to go ahead and make a game, all you got to do is ensure that you have a target hardware that your game can run on. This notion that, oh, the target from ground up platform nonsense is only when you're trying to tell people who know nothing about game development. Sorry, but I am not going to let this one basically go ahead and slide. I got game development experience enough to know that you can pretty much go ahead and budget your game for hardware targets. I've also listened to game developers who have basically taught me this stuff at GDC conferences. I mean, they put the videos out there. Go watch the one for The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine DLC. That's how you know the process in terms of game development and budgeting. It's the most concise, most detailed budgeting in terms of how you make your games discussion, even lecture that I've ever seen. The gentleman that came from CD Projekt Red at the time that did that discussion said when they were about to make the Blood and Wine DLC, their engineering team straight up told them, this is as much RAM, as much everything that you have. Go make your DLC and you're going to have to fit it up in there. And that's how they went ahead and made their own DLC for the game. Okay, so again, this talk, it doesn't really make any sense. I'm sorry, but please, let's stop using this.
For one specific hardware, lowest common denominator.
That would be designing a machine, just build a PC. But if you say, okay, my minimum requirements, let's go ahead and look at this stuff, man, because this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. You really must know this. Kingdom Come Deliverance, right? Let's do Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's the more, recent title, right? So you go ahead and say, okay, our minimum target hardware will be an Intel i5-8400 level CPU and a GTX 1060 level GPU or an RX 580 level GPU. How do we know what our target, hardware should be? Well, we use the Steam Hardware Survey. Nib, you always talk about the Steam Hardware Survey. I'm very shocked that you're not citing it. We look at the Steam Hardware Survey and we say, okay, what are the biggest or most prevalent GPUs that PC gamers are using? Or in the case of the console, we don't have to look at a hardware survey. The console is sitting right there. It's the same console everyone's going to get. So we don't even have to worry. So we go ahead and get a machine that is basically the common denominator of the three consoles, Series X, PS5. If we want to go crazy, throw a PS4 and an Xbox One in there. Let's get a common denominator going for those two. And we develop with the targets of what their RAM, their GPU and their CPU capabilities are. That's how developers, in my opinion anyways, make their decisions. That's how I would. I mean, we're cooking somewhere here. I cannot NDA myself too much. I got to click in and click out. So that's how we're going to basically make the choice. Please, again, I think this is really weird that this is the argument that anybody wants to bring up here. This is an argument that's coming from a place that, is jumping into technical aspects of things because it almost presumes that people don't really know the details.
and even one specific API, right?
One specific API? I don't understand. Oh, maybe the API given to you from the console maker to go ahead and publish your game on there? That makes no sense. The API is the API that they give you to basically build and package your game. You're not developing for the API. You're basically packaging your game and getting it ready with the API. You would have already done everything within the engine in terms of developing and making whatever amends that you need, or whatever, customizations you need for each platform. For instance, in the case of PlayStation, the way save states work on PlayStation is different from the way save states work with Xbox. So you just have to make, your save systems work a specific way. Nothing crazy for any studio that's been making games as long as this developer's here, that they would have to say, oh yeah, it's just so much work, when everybody else is doing it with ease.
And not having to spread your development team thinner across multiple platforms has major development benefits in content curation.
But what benefit is that to the consumer, though? I know I ran through that whole rabbit hole, but what is the benefit inherently to the consumer? Right?
Tech, optimization, focus, development, etc.
Then another benefit of exclusives is that
So all that benefit he just talked about is all benefits to the developer and nothing for the consumer.
they are by and large subsidized by the platform holder.
What? They're subsidized by the platform holder.
So they're not just spending the development budget to sell the games, but the games themselves are meant to act as system sellers.
Okay, but is it a first-party exclusive or is it a third-party exclusive? And this argument, I don't know, man. Nib, you might need to revisit this entire argument and break it down. Does that make sense? Because blocking the game from going to another, platform is designed for you to sell consoles, but at the detriment of the other platform holder, thereby being anti-competitive and also reducing accessibility for the gamer, also thereby being anti-consumer. I think you've argued yourself into a web. This is crazy, though.
They're meant to incentivize bringing people to the platform, and thus once they are inside the ecosystem, gain a 30% cut from every single purchase that new consumer to the platform ever makes.
You're a company spokesperson then. You're not a pro-consumer advocate. So it makes the person come into the ecosystem so that from then henceforth, every purchase that the gamer makes, who's having now made their way into the ecosystem, once they're in, we gotcha. And so we're now going to be taking 30% of everything. That's the platform holder's primary concern, not the consumer's, benefit as a whole. That 30%, who's getting it? The platform holder. The money being spent on the games to buy them, who's spending it? The consumer. The reason they'll even spend the money is because whatever they spend the money on is accessible to them via third-party games. You've destroyed your argument. Wow.
So because of that reason, we get exclusives that have tremendous budgets despite being developed from the ground up for only a single platform, which...
No, that's not always the case. Final Fantasy 16, when they advertised that game, they used the PC version. Look at it right here. When you fire up the Awakening trailer on PS5, it shows you the ESRB rating, the PlayStation logo, and in very small font, it says the following content is captured on PC, emulating the PS5 experience. Then they sold you the PlayStation unit, the PlayStation version of it, and locked it down for 6 months, or about. Hold on. Final Fantasy 16 release date. It came out June 22nd, 2023, PC. When did the PC release date come out? Square Enix port would be September 17, 2024. Where they were like, oh yeah, and then it came with the DLC. We were like, oh yeah, we're actually now announcing the port and blah, 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 blah. We'll get it to you in a year and blah, blah, blah. After a year it came out, I played the demo and it still had performance issues. So basically, They didn't have enough time to go ahead and pretty much ensure performance.
Again, has massive development and design benefits.
Development and design benefits for the developer, but you still are yet to tell us what the benefit is to the consumer.
So despite only releasing on one platform, they're still subsidized and still cost hundreds of millions of dollars because of those other business benefits. Hence, we reap the rewards.
And it can...
What rewards? What rewards? That, because more people are going to come into the ecosystem, they're going to get 30%. So they're going to invest it into making more games. And then when they make those games, you reap the rewards. When it's the accessible games that have funded those so-called exclusive games. Huh? If those other third-party games were not accessible to you and were locked on other platforms, how then would you be able to get, or would the platform holder be able to get the 30% to fund the exclusives again? Exclusivity has always been a sham. Like anywhere you look at it, it's always so funny when people start to try to argue it. It's like they start, it's like, how in the Lord of the Rings movie, they went into that forest and they had these spider webs and they were just basically getting tangled and tangled. And before they even got the spider webs in the dark forest or whatever, they were just running around in circles and could just not make any way. That's literally when you try to argue for exclusivity, especially the third party side, and even sometimes the first party side as well.
Also increase release cadence and time to develop, right? Because again, you're not spreading your time, resources, manpower across more platforms. You're
Bruh, it's a skill issue, my dude. Hey, this is resources and manpower talk. Obsidian is just sitting there going, what was that you said about resources and manpower? We are here about to punch out 2 games in 1 year. If Obsidian checks that box, it literally would expose the nastiness in this industry in terms of these developers not getting a release cadence. The developers that make Yakuza games, some of our audience members said, hey man, VG, cite these guys. The folk that make the Yakuza games, what is their release cadence? Are they making their games exclusive? My dude, this is a skill issue, man. And this is like something that, I don't know, man. This is weird.
Focusing on one. We can reduce development times. I mean, that could be one of the reasons why, for example, in recent years, Xbox has had a worse release cadence than PlayStation.
Huh? That could be one of the reasons why they've had a worse release cadence than PlayStation. PlayStation's been basically blocking games from going to Xbox and sprinkling in exclusives one at a time. 2018 was the best year in the PS4 generation. God of War 2018, Spider-Man 2018. Those games rocked it. Follow 2019, Ghost of Tsushima, and then you had The Last of Us Part 2. But The Last of Us Part 2 didn't necessarily hit well in terms of the audiences. But you could say that the entire conversation about, single player release and all that, that was as a result of the development teams already having been working on games for the most part from previous generations, or after games that had already carried them from previous generations into the new generation. Ghost of Tsushima was the one that was a new IP, and that was after the infamous, or I don't know what Sucker Punch would have made at the time, right? But Xbox, their own challenge in that regard were manifold, scale-bound. That money that they were supposed to use to actually go ahead and, make the game, the developers did not manage the funds very well. Then, when they went ahead and gave money to Square Enix over here, developing from one platform to lock Tomb Raider down, the whole press and the entire internet chewed them out, right? So again, you got to think about all of this in this regard.
Time, resources, manpower across more platforms. You're focusing on one. We can reduce development times. I mean, that could be one of the reasons why, for example, in recent years, Xbox has had a worse release cadence than PlayStation.
What is the benefit to the consumer?
On the whole.
Despite Xbox having essentially double the number of studios as PlayStation.
Because they're having to develop for PC ubiquitously alongside the Xbox.
Okay, dude. This dude, he's come again with another technical speak that he is not aware of. The easiest, dude, I can fire up a game demo project with Unreal Engine and plug an Xbox controller into that engine, and it would just go from Windows directly and start working. It is probably the easiest platform to develop your game for because Windows is running on that Xbox. That, what he just said there, is so strange to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's the strangest thing I've ever heard in my life. Again, he's trying to make arguments from a technical side, but this is just not helping.
So the question then becomes, why is Xbox pivoting to a multi-platform strategy, and what does it entail for the other platforms? Now, we can see from all the data that's been presented and that we have, the reason Xbox is pivoting is because the strategies that they had employed with the PC ubiquitous day-to-day releases, the Game Pass focus.
What is the benefit to the consumer? How did this video go into why Xbox is pivoting?
Xbox.
So the question then becomes,
why is Xbox pivoting to a multi-platform strategy? Xbox has had a multi-platform strategy for 8 years. I thought the video was about exclusives are...
Why is Xbox pivoting to a multi-platform strategy, and what does it entail for the other platforms? Now, we can see from all the data that's been presented and that we have, the reason Xbox is pivoting is because the strategies that they had employed with the PC ubiquitous day-to-day releases, the game...
He's about to make a mistake. Oh my gosh, I wish I could stop him, but it's too late. He's about to make a mistake. He's about to make a big error.
Game Pass focus, the marketing to that end, etc. They have cannibalized their console ecosystem.
Hey! I knew he was going to do it. I knew he was going to do it. I knew he was going to do it. They made it sound like, oh, the fact that they've done all these things has now caused their consoles to pretty much, you know, go in a sales decline. When in reality, their consoles were already in a sales decline before these things were done. Do you see the timeline mistake that it's almost like every single PlayStation fanboy makes this same mistake when we have human calendar in real time. Steam best of 2019 is the one that I can find. I have the 2018 and 2017. Shout out to Princess Peaches. Somebody went and found me. They used the Wayback Machine and got me the 2017 and 2018 version. The very first time Xbox would take its game to the PC platform, day and date, was Quantum Break, right? If we go back and look at Xbox One console sales, we'll see that the trend at the time was basically revealing that Xbox One console, I just made the mistake, that Xbox One console sales were basically crap. I mean, think about this. Xbox One console sales finished, they basically they topped themselves around, and if we could just run numbers here. I mean, we could just do a little sample. I don't know what the annual numbers would have been, but they ended up at 58 million, right? Let's just say for the console generation, right? After, which is from 2013, 7 years. So divided by 7, that would have been about 8 million consoles a year. Compared to PlayStation, who at, say, the 8-year mark, they had already sold about 100 million consoles. Divide that by 7, and you will realize that Xbox already saw that they were already trailing way behind PlayStation in terms of console sales. So 3 years into the console generation, they made the decision to bring their game day and date to PC. I made you guys the timeline to show this. And he has made that mistake here and has left his original argument, which was supposed to be about why exclusivity is beneficial to the consumer, right? And is now jumping into console sales narratives. I have your timeline, guys. I have a huge chart. Nib, you need to go back and remake this video. I think you probably intended to argue something, but never really got around to it. And maybe you got excited about another whole talking point and you started talking about that. But I'll say, thumbs up to you for that. Good effort, but you might want to bring us back to what it is that you're trying to, argue here.
Their console market share has massively dwindled.
Because they don't have exclusives, because they started putting their games day and date on PC. When their console sales were declining before they actually put their games day and date on PC. What is going on with these arguments here, folks? I just can't wrap my mind around how everybody misses this reality. Is it on purpose?
In fact, it's worse this generation somehow than it was during the Xbox One and Xbox 360 generations.
The Xbox One generation, the thing had already been going south, and they quickly pivoted instantly after 3 years into the console generation, with freaking Quantum Break launching September of 2016. Basically almost in Q4. So they probably must have been looking at the thing and going, oh my gosh, we're getting smoked. We're getting smoked. In order for them to be able to go ahead and make more money. And Remedy made this game, by the way. Multiplat Remedy almost didn't break even Remedy because we left it on Epic Games. I guess Epic Games demanded that. With freaking, whatchamacallit, Alan Wake Part 2, Remedy.
It's looking like the series consoles will perform worse than those other previous two generations.
Is that a benefit to the consumer? Isn't that what we started this video from? What's the benefit to the consumer for exclusivity?
Which is a feat in itself. So the problem is you have that decline in console market share because of the strategies employed, on top of a massive increase in operational costs due to acquisitions.
What is the benefit to the consumer of exclusivity?
They have now just under 40 studios since acquiring ABK and ZeniMax and the 7 studios in 18 and 19.
Okay.
Playground Games and Obsidian and all the rest of it. They have spent almost $100 billion, have almost 40 studios, thousands upon thousands of employees, and their costs are orders of magnitude higher. And with that massively dwindled console ecosystem,
far less sales, including a huge loss of the 30% cut of people who would have invested in the ecosystem.
And where is the benefit to the consumer?
As well as intense Game Pass sales cannibalization.
And flatlining revenue sans ABK, they essentially cannot afford to do exclusivity anymore. Because
What is the benefit to the consumer of exclusivity? You can say all of this, because of all this stuff, they can't afford to do exclusivity anymore, but I will still be playing those PlayStation games on PC. Why? Because PlayStation cannot afford to do exclusivity anymore. But that's not the point of discussion. I can always, we can always bring the evidence to body this stuff that you're doing to show you that they're all basically pouring their games on PC with the license to print money, Yoshida statements, and, trying to find money to fund other games and blah, blah, blah. But your argument is not even anymore the subject of the discussion. Guys, we're 30 minutes into this video and I can't get anything in terms of what the benefit for exclusivity is for the consumer.
Because they are just not selling the games on their platform in the volume that consumers are buying exclusives on Nintendo and PlayStation platforms, right?
This man said PlayStation platforms? What volume? But that's not the point of the discussion, though. But what? These guys, bro.
The NPD/Sakana, GSD, sales rankings, software rankings, all the rest of it speaks for itself.
When PlayStation has 75 million consoles and Astrobot sold 2 million, that's a volume that is akin to Nintendo. Anyways, back to the original question. What is the benefit to the consumer, though?
Xbox just doesn't have that kind of sales leverage anymore with exclusivity.
Neither does PlayStation. But what is the benefit to the consumer, though?
Because they don't have the install base with the consoles.
But what is the benefit to the consumer, though?
So they are forced to pivot to multi-platform strategy in order to essentially continue the upkeep of their massively increasing costs.
But what is the benefit to the consumer, though?
It is not the same for PlayStation and Nintendo.
But PlayStation is firing its developers, though. But what is the benefit to the consumer, though? I mean, I'm just keep asking this question till this video ends.
Who, as again the data shows, has been going from strength to strength.
With 7% margin in their whole profits, which is basically paycheck to paycheck. However, though, what is the benefit to the consumer? Something that you claim this video is supposed to be about.
With massive growth and profit, etc.
Massive growth and profit? Did he say and profit? The margin is like 7%. But anyways, what is the benefit of exclusivity to the consumer, though?
Ultimately, what PlayStation is seeking to do, as the interviews from the executives I posted earlier show, is seeking additive revenue only. They are
additive revenue only. Oh, so when they basically shut down the studios, fire developers, and then sell the game, it's only for additive revenue. But for Xbox, it's for survival. That's a very silly, comparison, or very silly categorization, Nib. But, again, that's a different conversation. However, we're interested in how exclusivity benefits the consumer. You're still yet to present a strong case to that effect.
Trying to use PC as additive revenue and a way to bolster consumers from PC coming over to PlayStation.
They ain't coming. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. In fact, not even are they not just coming, they ain't even buying. I mean, like lately, after they started doing the login nonsense, go look at every PlayStation game that has launched since then. The only game that survived and came out with its head on its neck was Ghost of Tsushima. But they had to go ahead and remove that thing because Ragnarok looked like crap in terms of its sales compared to 2018 God of War. So PC gamers are looking and saying there's just enough games to play without the hassle of some console platformer. Why would a PC gamer go buy a PlayStation? Someone who's invested in their own machine will go buy a PlayStation? For what? For what? PC gamers already show from the NPD data that their gaming preferences are very different from the console gamers. Maybe some might buy a PlayStation, but man, after Spider-Man, they'll just wait. PC master wait is what they're now saying. That's a meme some console people are throwing towards PC, or some people, I don't know what it is, but people will just wait.
And even with Lego Horizon, they're trying to use that, as they said themselves in an interview, to bolster younger generation audiences and Nintendo owners.
No, they're trying to use it as a way to print money. That's what Shuhei Yoshida said. And why did they even take it to Nintendo if it's only PC that they want to use? Why is MLB The Show on Nintendo? But again, to the topic at hand, Nib has spent the last almost 4 minutes not telling us why exclusivity is beneficial to the consumer.
To move over to PlayStation.
We take a more strategic approach.
Homie, nobody is going to come with this strategic approach nonsense, blah, 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 that Herman Holtz said. And then ended up, no offense, Herman Holtz, but, I like the way you basically were able to kind of like structure it in a very tepid way that didn't get the PlayStation fan base riled up. And, also got the investors smiling that more money was going to be coming in. Because right after this particular interview that he's about to go ahead and clip, we got a barrage of sequels. Sequels! Let's go ahead and listen to the interview. But still, though, what is the benefit? I'm not going to get distracted here. What's the benefit of exclusivity to the consumers?
Approach, and we introduce our great franchises to new audiences, and we're finding new audiences that are potentially going to be very interested in playing, for example, sequels on the PlayStation platform.
Hey, that's not what's happening, bro. Guys, please. Last year alone, they launched 2 sequels on PC. They didn't even launch just one. They launched two sequels on PC. What? Check this out. Horizon Forbidden West was launched in 2024, March. Did I say 2? I'm sorry. 3 sequels. Helldivers 2. And then they launched Marvel Spider-Man Ragnarok. That was the third one that they launched. So, sorry, Spidey 2 was this year. I'm sorry. So Horizon, Spider-Man, And Helldivers 2. Yes, they did launch 3 last time. They launched a 4th one this year. What sequel are they talking about? Ghost of Yotei is also going to go to PC, as far as I'm concerned. It's just that simple. And they're going to launch The Last of Us Part 2, a sequel, very soon. So what Herman Hulst said here, I don't know what games. Maybe there's a reboot of other games that they're going to launch on PC for us to go play the intergalactic sequel. But again, anyways, that still doesn't answer the... I can't say this enough.
We have high hopes that we're actually able to bring new players into PlayStation at large, but into PlayStation platforms specifically.
Now, you may not think that will be successful, but
It's not that I may not think that that will be successful. It's the fact that PlayStation keeps launching the sequels on PC that makes me think that they're just saying it, but I'm not seeing any evidence they actually want to actually put it to work. Still, though, what is the benefit of exclusives to the consumer?
that is the strategy that they're employing.
And there is increasing data showing that their strategy is working.
From where? So you mean to tell me that these 42% of new users are from PC? Some of you said they were from Xbox. How am I going to believe that? While at the same time, spending is increasing on PC, we can't buy graphics cards. Sure, they're scalpers, but we saw lines outside the micro centers at the new launch. So where did this 42% come from? I could just tell you that it's Jimmy, who basically turned 14, and during Christmas, his mommy went and bought him a PlayStation. We could literally chalk that up to it, right? Or freaking, I don't know, Kevin. Kevin turned 18 and left home and went and got his first job. And so he decided he was going to buy himself a game because mommy and daddy had bought him a Nintendo Switch for many years. And so he's like, oh, I'm going to go buy me my first, gaming device. And he bought a PS5. You don't know. I don't know. We don't know. But let's not go ahead and try to make it sound like, oh, yeah, it can be the Xbox players because they never even gave them a first game, right? So they wouldn't even be saying, oh, they will come buy a sequel. I don't even know what this data set is. I laugh when PlayStation fans throw this data out there. It's like, it's an inclusive data set. It shows, yes, 42% of new players purchased a PS5 during the Q4 season, but who were they? We don't know.
For example, a whopping 42% of all the PS5 sold last quarter, and keep in mind it was a record-breaking quarter for PS5 hardware sales, 42% of them, according to PlayStation themselves.
After 42 minutes, I cannot find a single shred of solid line of thinking to tell me why exclusivity is beneficial for the consumer. This video has been a challenge to get through, but I had to get through it so that I wouldn't be told that I'm taking things out of context. Perhaps there's something at the end here. Let me listen to the end so we can see.
Had never owned a PlayStation before. So nearly half of all the PS5 sold in that record-breaking quarter were to people who were new to PlayStation.
And as all the data shows, these traditional exclusives first, console ecosystem first strategies that are used by Nintendo and PlayStation are the ones that are by far more successful in terms of revenue and growth than the strategy that Xbox has employed.
In terms of revenue and growth? Revenue? These guys are making more money than Xbox? With what? Games that are accessible to the PlayStation players. So again, if these games were quality over accessibility, PlayStation wouldn't even be able to make any money. I don't know, man. This is such a weird argument. Anyways.
Which has led to them now having to essentially pivot yet again.
That's not true, Nib. You know that's not true. Or maybe you don't know that's not true, but it's not true. They already did the pivot back in the Xbox One days. And basically from a poor launch that did not necessarily allow for them to be able to cater to their audiences. You know, we all know this. The timeline speaks for itself.
This time to a multi-platform strategy.
Anyways, I tried. I guess, Xbox is the most relevant platform ever because, man, it appears to me that the PlayStation fans don't even have enough to actually go ahead and say about PlayStation. That it's gotten to the point where they just started, I don't know what it is. You know what? If you made it through, thank you. Thanks for watching. Peace out.